Good morning. Welcome back to the broadcast Retirement Network. I'm Jeff Snyder. This is BRN AM for Thursday, April 1st, 2021. And here is our top story: Rethinking Public Employees' Retirement Plans. Well, joining me now to discuss this and a lot more are Rod Crane and Richard Hiller. Both are senior fellows with the Reason Foundation's Pension Integrity Project. Gentlemen, great to see you. Thanks so much for joining us on the program this morning.
I'm glad to be here.
Great to see you.
Rich, I'll start with you. Let's start with who the Reason Foundation is and then what the Pension Integrity Project is.
Sure. Thanks, Jeff. And thanks for having us. The Reason Foundation is a large, well-known public policy think tank that's involved in many issues that are public policy related. The Pension Integrity Project in particular is one that's looking at state and local pensions and working with key decision makers, whether it be in legislatures or councils or pension systems themselves, key people involved in the process and working towards reform, helping them reform on a pro bono basis, doing actuarial work, doing design work, really looking to help make these plans more efficient, more effective in meeting the needs of employees, as well as looking at some of the key issues as far as unfunded liabilities and addressing needed changes from a taxpayer perspective.
And Rich, so let's you and Rod wrote a paper about rethinking public sector plans, and just for the audience's benefit, we're not talking about multi-employer plans. We're not which are union Taft-Hartley plans. We're not talking about corporate plans. We're strictly focused on the public sector, state, local governments that offer defined benefit plans. What's the issue here with these plans?
That's right, Jeff. We're looking at state and local plans. That there are many issues, but pensions have gone from kind of a nothing issue politically into, in the last decade, into really a front burner issue in many states, as we've seen the percentage of state budgets that are going to fund these pension plans and dealing with huge and unsustainable unfunded liabilities in many cases. So the issues are numerous. One is trying to get these unfunded mandates under control. Another, though, that I would suggest is at least as important, is understanding the changing demographics in the public sector workforce and looking at whether or not the traditional defined benefit plans that have been in place there for decades, for a century or more in some cases, really are meeting the needs of employees, at this point. Or if they're not meeting the needs and building up these unfunded liabilities, looking at what needs to change in order to make these plans more effective, more efficient, and sustainable for the long term.
Rod, these plans, defined benefit plans in the public sector are really used, at least they were used, I want to get your perspective on this, to attract and retain workforce, thinking about firefighters, police, at least local government, emergency personnel, workers, to keep them working at their jobs for long periods of time. So these plans are important. They serve a purpose. They serve a very important purpose.
Well, I think that's true. Yeah, the plans have a long history of basically filling a total compensation gap that at one point existed, where the public employers had to compete for talent and employees against private sector employers who often pay much more and have better kind of career paths. On the other hand, the pensions were a cheap way for governments and to actually add something of significant value to that compensation package. And a long time ago, the cheap way was because it was cheap because there weren't that many people who were retired under those plans. And when they became kind of invisible in terms of at the day-to-day and century to, let's just call it decade-to-decade existence of these plans, all of a sudden they became mature. When you have 50 to 60% of the members of these plans now retired and receiving benefits, then the financing of these plans become much more troublesome, and changes in the economy and investment return markets have basically pointed out very strongly the weaknesses of ignoring the risks around funding these kinds of long-term promises. And now the cities and the states and the special districts that have these very large promises, finding themselves they never put enough money in the first place to deal with the ups and downs of the markets and increasing longevity of their retirees. And at the end of the day, here we are trying to deal with public pension reform among the states, and as Rich is often pointed out, when you're trying to do budget reform for pensions, you can often get mistake the budget reform as actually pension reform. They're two different things, and I would kick it over to Rich to talk more about that.
Yeah, Rich, what are your thoughts on that, and the constraints put on government to do the things it needs to do with these budgetary constraints?
Well, and that's a key point right there, Jeff. Is that with the increasing unfunded liabilities and the need to pay these down as they become more and more of a problem in handling for the state budgets, what happens is it becomes more difficult for states to perform, or local governments, the other services that they need to. Having teachers in the classrooms, police on the streets, paving the roads, fixing infrastructure, all the things that state and local government does, the greater these pension debts become, the more those other functions are being strained. And, but there's a key point though that Rod mentioned, is that you can't confuse pension reform and budget reform. Now, if you need more money in the state to perform services, say you need to hire teachers or you need infrastructure work, say, well, we're going to reduce the pension contributions. That's not pension reform. Okay, that's strictly dealing with the budget. Pension reform itself is, that there's a need to look at the plan, saying, what's the purpose and objective of this plan? How are we meeting that for all stakeholders, for employees, for employers, in terms of their workforce needs, as well as taxpayers, who are ultimately paying the freight on these plans. And the idea of understanding the objectives of the plan seems to be, very simple, right? Of course, you have to understand what your plan's trying to do in order to seek solutions to help it do that best. But in the public sector, in the private sector, basically, you name it, I think the issue of plan administrators and participants, for that matter, really understanding what their plan purpose is something that is not as widespread as you might like, and not enough attention has been paid to it. I'll always talk about this as saying, well, how can you solve for something if you're not defining the problem? If you don't have the objective that you know you're trying to achieve, how can you really build that forward? And it doesn't have to be complex, but there's sort of this assumption, well, of course, everybody knows what the objective is. And I don't think that's true.
Yeah, really good point, Rod. I mean, I think these plans were set up decades ago, to yours and Rich's point, and the workforce has changed. The workforce in the private sector certainly has changed. And I know, reading the paper, we've obviously shifted to a defined contribution plan. We'll get the solutions in the second segment of the show. But really, the plans need to change along with the workforce. And you're seeing, even in the public sector, Rod, the workforce be a little bit more mobile than it was in the past, right? You're not seeing people come and work for government right out of college for 30 years. Maybe they have a government job for 5 years, 10 years, and maybe move on. So there's that mobility is kind of lurching into this equation.
Yeah, it's always been there, and I would at least say a little bit more strongly, the defined benefit pension plans in the public sector have always had this portability, the fact that the people do leave jobs and move on to other jobs, and it isn't just a little different now. It has turned over in the public sector, where particularly I focus on teachers. I think about teachers, where there's been some studies that indicate that in the long run, you have to spend 25 or more years to actually reap the full benefit of one of these teacher pension systems. Well, what about those people who are only around for 3 or 5 or 10 or 15? Is that good national retirement benefit security policy to let those folks, when they move from one state to another, to do it, and they continue their teaching jobs, but they never accumulate a sufficient pension benefit to make up for all that service over the course of their careers? So we've always had this mobility issue, and the fact that it has a negative impact on retirement security for huge cohorts of public sector employees, and particularly teachers, in my mind.
Let me, Jeff, let me emphasize that with a point, or with a statistic from the Department of Labor, the Bureau of Labor Statistics. In 2020, January of 2020, the median employment tenure for a state government employee nationally was 5.6 years. Okay, when you think about that, where these plans were designed considering an employee was going to spend their career with that employer. If we're talking today that median tenure is less than 6 years, that's a tremendous difference from what it was a generation ago. And plans need to recognize that if the employees are going to get the financial security and retirement that frankly they deserve after a career in employment. That career, however, may be at any number of different employers rather than at just one.
Yeah. Well, really good points. Gentlemen, I need to take a very quick break. When we come back, we'll talk to Rod and Rich about possible solutions to this issue. You're going to want to stay tuned right here on BRN AM. Imagine a new television network that will make you richer, healthier, and in control of your financial future. This network is for the policewoman in Nashville, Tennessee, the baker in Dubuque, Iowa, the teacher in Lexington, Kentucky. We want to make the idea of savings and retirement culturally relevant. But what do you see as a defining issue of the midterms, especially for the smaller businesses? I mean, they are the lifeblood of the American economy. Featuring exclusive interviews, current affairs, and docuseries. 33 years old, you retired early.
The philosophy is money only matters if it helps you live a life that you love.
But you got to start thinking about retirement as soon as you get in.
The Broadcast Retirement Network will drive very high engagement with premium partnerships. So this isn't retirement and savings for your parents or grandparents. This is for all Americans. And we're going to change the way you think about money. Welcome to the next frontier of retirement and savings. This is BRN, the Broadcast Retirement Network.
Are you stuck with a low credit score, a credit report and score that's causing you to be denied credit or pay higher interest rates than others for the same things? Then do what Terrence did and call Credit Repaired for your free credit evaluation to help restore your credit.
I started thinking about buying a new house, and my score wasn't where I needed it to be. I called and spoke with one of the representatives, and we just had a good conversation, and I liked what he was saying.
Just one call for his free credit evaluation was all it took to start back on the track to repairing his credit.
I'm seeing the deletions and I'm getting the report, so I know something's being done. It does make a difference to me.
All it takes is one call to get started.
Credit Repair has given me a second chance to have a better credit score.
Don't let a low credit score hold you back another day. Do what Terrence did and make the call for your free credit evaluation.
Call 800-819-4152. That's 800-819-4152. Again, 800-819-4152.
Welcome back. We're talking to Rod Crane and Richard Hiller. Both are senior fellows with the Reason Foundation's Pension Integrity Project. Gentlemen, thanks so much for staying with us again this morning.
Thank you, Jeff.
Thank you.
Rich, I want to start with you because what are the choices here? Is it an A or B choice? A, we have pensions. B, we don't have pensions. Is that the thought process here?
Well, it's a great question, Jeff, because unfortunately, I think that in a lot of cases has become the choice. You know, either it's a traditional DB as it's been known for decades, or it's a typical 401k style DC plan, which, as we know, was not ever designed to be a primary retirement plan. And this binary choice, unfortunately, in many cases, leads to inaction in terms of real reform, because you say, you know, both ends of this spectrum have significant issues when trying to be used as a primary retirement plan for the modern workforce. The answers really lie in some type of mixture, if you will, and taking the best aspects from DB and the best aspects from DC and making them work together to meet, again, employee needs, employer needs, and recognizing the taxpayer issues as well.
Yeah, really good point. And you know, those political fights, we read about them all the time, Rod. You know, it shouldn't be an either or. There are hybrids or coming to the middle and agreeing on compromise. But what are some of the ideas that you and Rich came up with in terms of rethinking the public plan retirement offerings?
Well, I don't know if it's all of this is unique, but because there have been some really interesting ideas and out there that do marry together some of the best aspects of defined benefit and defined contribution that exists right now. We think that there can be more to that. But if you kind of tick off the attributes, what are we actually looking for? What are the things that make DB plans so attractive? That's the fact that we've got to focus on retirement income. That's fundamentally what they do. It's a retirement income for life. So longevity is something that you don't worry about when you're in the DB plan, because that payment comes every month. the certainty of the benefit is also something that we want and like to take from the DB world and see what we can do with here. The fact that investments are handled by professionals who have a singular goal here is something that we want to bring into the new solution set. And we like the fact that we can get disability and death benefits from pension plans as well. So grab all that, and then you go to the defined contribution side. And what are the great things there? Well, one of the things that DB plans do horribly is that we talked about it earlier is you don't have a portable benefit. If you leave and you're not vested, or you're a short service individual, your benefit is worth nothing or not very much when you ultimately retire 30 or 40 years from now. So benefit portability is a hallmark attribute of defined contribution. We want to keep that if we can. We love the fact that in this day and age that DC plans don't add new unfunded liabilities for the employers. So that's one of the things you hear all the time by public policymakers. And then the fact that it's flexible. It's flexible in a number of different ways. One of the problems in the public sector is it's like once you have a DB plan, there's always a DB plan. You can never take it away. That California rule and the vesting side of benefits, something that ERISA doesn't even require for vesting in the corporate world. You can change something if the employer needs to change things, like changing work patterns. Well, we can't do that in the public sector with the DB plans. DC plans can do that. And then the ability to focus the investments on individuals rather than the average participant in the plan. Optimization of investment structures and to meet individuals' needs, whether they're married or not, whether they think they're going to live until 95, whether they've got dependents, taking into account inflationary concerns. All of these things we want to bring into the new designs, and that's where we think there's tools out there that we could be using that were not enough. Just some examples. Basically, and Rich has written a number of pieces on this. Is the group annuity world is not as bad as some people think. Some people say annuity and it's bad. Well, annuity products can solve some of these problems for DC plans. You don't have to have a DC plan that lets people retire and spend all their money on a $100,000 RV. You can make them annuitize. So a plan design can come into the equation and make a DC plan look and act more like a DB plan. And then probably one of the things that we want to focus on a lot is the ability to take more of those factors into account that may affect retirement security. Like we talked about, the inflation, healthcare costs, different levels of longevity that people experience, and allow the investment of their money to be more customized, so they get that greater probability, that greater certainty that DB plans still provide. So those are examples where existing tools exist and they're just not being coupled together in the right way. It's something that we really want these public sector policymakers and pension administration experts to start thinking about. How do we evolve these plans so they don't become dinosaurs?
Yeah, really good point. Rich, I've got about 90 seconds, well, maybe 2 minutes left. Is this, we had the Secure Act, we had the CARES Act, we had the American Recovery Plan. Do any of those pieces of legislation help with what we're describing? Or do we need an additional package from the feds? Or does this have to come at the state level? It sounds, or the local level. The local level has to have the wherewithal to address these issues. Where can we best start?
Well, that's certainly a 60-second question, Jeff.
Yeah, I was teeing it up as the teaser for when you guys come back.
I think there are some of those things do help. The Secure Act, I'd say in particular, because, one of the things it's doing is allowing or really mandating the idea of lifetime income in DC, getting people thinking that, that a DC plan isn't just a savings plan. But, certainly, there are more things that can be done from a regulatory perspective. But, as Rod was saying, a lot of things can be done without that, under existing regulations. And one of the things that I think, and I know that you've spent a lot of time on, and that I think is really helping move towards solutions, is the technology available in the financial world today that wasn't there, a decade ago or so. And allowing you to do things on an individual basis in a cost-effective way that before could only really be looked at a plan level. And those kind of things allow you, I think, to bring some DB-like qualities into, more of a DC foundation that allows for the mobility as well, but also keeps you focused on that retirement income need down the road. So look forward to talking more about, what can be done going forward, Jeff.
Yeah, well, yeah, and you're right. I wasn't fair by giving you a loaded question like that, but I look, as long as we can get the conversation started, I think everyone's got to come together and think these issues through, because at the end of the day, if we don't have enough money to pay people for their retirement, there are going to be a lot of people out there who are going to be suffering because they don't have any money. Rod Crane, Rich Hiller, great to see you as always. Thanks so much for joining us on the program this morning, and we look forward to having you back very soon.
Our pleasure. Thank you.
Thanks, Rod and Rich. Great to see you, and thanks for sharing your perspective. And that wraps up this episode of BRN AM. Have a topic of interest, someone you think we should talk to, then drop us a line. And don't forget, for all the information in retirement markets, technology, personal finance, so much more all in one place, check out our daily newsletter, The Morning Pulse, and of course, our website. Well, tomorrow it's Good Friday. We're going to be taking a day off. We'll have a repeat show, a best of show, if you will. And then we're back again on Saturday for BRN Weekly, where we have a very special guest and we take a look at some of our best segments for the week. So until then, I'm Jeff Snyder. Stay safe, keep on saving, and don't forget, roll with the changes.
Are you being audited, and do you owe the IRS $10,000 or more in back taxes? Is the IRS threatening to take more of your money? Don't fight the IRS alone. The Tax Doctor is here to help you negotiate your tax bill and reduce your stress. The IRS can freeze your assets and seize your bank accounts, but you can stop these IRS actions. The Tax Doctor will work with you using our years of experience to represent your case to help you get the best resolution under the IRS guidelines. Help is here to deal with the IRS to reduce your stress. We've handled thousands of cases, so we know what we're doing. If you owe $10,000 or more in back taxes, do not call the IRS alone. Call a Tax Doctor now for a tax emergency analysis.
Call 800-224-6439.